Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work as a software engineer in Seattle, and most of my college friends scattered across the country after graduation. We try to keep in touch through social media and the occasional video call, but you know how it is, life gets busy. So when my buddy from college messaged me asking if I'd be one of his groomsmen, I was genuinely excited. We hadn't seen each other in almost 3 years, but he was one of those friends you could pick up right where you left off with. The wedding was in Chicago, so I had to take time off work and book a flight. I didn't mind though, weddings are always fun, and I was looking forward to catching up with everyone. My friend told me I'd be paired with one of the bridesmaids for the ceremony since his fiancée had more bridesmaids than he had groomsmen. No big deal, I thought. These things happen. When I arrived in Chicago and met up with the wedding party, I was introduced to my bridesmaid partner. She seemed nice enough, friendly and outgoing. But something felt off about the pairing from the start. The bride kept making these not-so-subtle comments about how we'd look great together and how we were perfect for each other. It became pretty obvious that we'd been matched up primarily because we were both black, which made me uncomfortable. I mean, I get that people sometimes try to play matchmaker at weddings, but basing it solely on race felt weird. The first night, the whole wedding party went out to a local bar. That's when my bridesmaid partner really started laying it on thick. She was being very flirty, touching my arm constantly and making it clear she was interested in something romantic. She asked if I was seeing anyone back in Seattle. I told her I was single and just focusing on work mostly. She got excited and said that was perfect since she was single too, suggesting that maybe this weekend could be the start of something special between us. I tried to keep things light and friendly, but she wasn't taking the hint. When we got back to the hotel, she asked if I wanted to come up to her room for a nightcap. I politely declined, saying I was tired from the flight and needed sleep. She pushed back, telling me not to be shy since we were both adults. I had to be more direct and told her I really wasn't looking for anything romantic. That's when she got persistent. She started listing all the reasons we'd be perfect together. We were both black, both single, both successful. When I tried to change the subject, she kept pushing. She asked why I was being so closed off and said she thought we had a connection. I had to be completely honest with her. I explained that I wasn't interested in short-term relationships, and since we lived in different states, there was really no future for us anyway. She finally backed off, saying she respected my decision and thought I was a good guy for being honest. The next day during wedding prep, I started chatting with another bridesmaid. She was working on her master's degree and we had a lot in common. We both loved hiking, read the same authors, and had similar taste in movies. We exchanged numbers and started texting throughout the day. She was funny and smart, and I genuinely enjoyed talking to her. The wedding ceremony went smoothly. During the reception, I danced with several people, including both my bridesmaid partner and the other bridesmaid I've been talking to. Everything seemed fine until I spent a longer dance with the second bridesmaid. That's when things went completely sideways. My original bridesmaid partner and the bride cornered me near the bar. The bride told me they needed to talk about my behavior that night. When I asked what she meant, she said it was inappropriate how I was acting with the other bridesmaid since I was supposed to be paired with my original partner. I explained that we were just dancing and talking, and I didn't see the problem. My bridesmaid partner jumped in, saying the other girl was too young for me anyway, and that it looked weird. I pointed out that she was 24, almost 25, while I was 32, which wasn't exactly scandalous. The bride insisted that since she was still in college, it wasn't appropriate. I had to clarify that she was getting her master's degree and wasn't some teenager. That's when my bridesmaid partner dropped the bomb that made my jaw hit the floor. She accused me of having a thing for white women, suggesting that's what this was really about. The accusation was so out of left field and offensive that I literally took a step back. Here I was, being lectured about my preferences by people who had clearly tried to set me up based purely on race. I told them that was completely out of line and that I wasn't going to stand there and be accused of having some kind of fetish. The bride started crying, saying I was ruining her special day and that she had worked hard to make sure everyone was paired up perfectly. I told them I needed to leave since I had an early flight the next morning anyway. I walked away before the situation could escalate further. I went straight to my hotel room and started packing. About an hour later, I got a text from the other bridesmaid saying she'd left too after things got uncomfortable for her as well. The next morning I noticed I'd been removed from the wedding group chat. So had she. I felt terrible that the drama had affected someone else who'd done nothing wrong. A few days later, my friend called to explain what happened after I left. He apologized for all the drama and mentioned that his wife had been crying for like an hour after I left. I told him I felt bad about ruining her night. He assured me he wasn't mad at me, admitting he knew from the start that trying to force me and the bridesmaid together was a bad idea, but his wife was so convinced we'd hit it off. I explained that the whole thing had gotten really uncomfortable, especially when she accused me of having racial preferences. He agreed that was messed up and said he'd told his wife that was wrong to say. He went on to explain that my bridesmaid partner had apparently told everyone I'd led her on, and then abandoned her for a white girl. The bride was upset because her perfect matchmaking plan had fallen apart, and she felt like I disrespected her efforts. But here's where the story gets satisfying. About a month later, my friend called me again with an update. Apparently, the other bridesmaid, the one I'd actually gotten along with, had started dating the bride's brother, who she'd met at the wedding. When the bride found out, she threw an absolute fit about how inappropriate it was, since he was 35 and she was just a student. My friend told me that his wife had been ranting about how both the bridesmaid and I had disrespected her wedding by not following her matchmaking plans. I asked if she was really mad that the bridesmaid was dating someone else entirely. He explained that it got even better. She had actually called the bridesmaid and told her she wasn't welcome at family events anymore because she went against the bride's wishes. I said that was insane. My friend agreed and told me that his wife's brother had told her to mind her own business, and now half the family was taking his side. The bride had been complaining to anyone who would listen about how her perfect wedding was ruined by people who don't appreciate her efforts. The final twist came a few weeks later. My friend texted me a screenshot from social media. The bride had posted a long rant about ungrateful wedding guests and people who can't appreciate when someone tries to help them find love. The comment section was brutal. Even some of her own family members were calling her out for being controlling and inappropriate. The bridesmaid I'd gotten along with ended up in a serious relationship with the bride's brother. They're apparently very happy together, which has only made the bride more bitter about the whole situation. She's convinced that if I had just played along with her plan, everything would have worked out perfectly. I moved to America 6 months ago to be closer to my daughter and her husband. Back home, I worked as an English teacher for 20 years, which is why my English is pretty good, though you can definitely hear my accent when I speak. My daughter got married last year to a wonderful man, and they decided to settle down here. Being a widow for the past 5 years, I felt lonely back home, so when they offered for me to come live with them, I jumped at the chance. The transition hasn't been easy. Everything here is bigger, faster, and louder than what I'm used to. My daughter works from home as a software developer, and she's always busy with video calls and deadlines. I try not to bother her during work hours because I know how stressful her job can be. She's been so good to me, letting me use her car whenever I need to run errands. That Tuesday, I needed to pick up some groceries and household items. My daughter was in back-to-back meetings all day, so I decided to venture out on my own. She had shown me the route to Walmart a few times before, and I felt confident enough to go by myself. I grabbed the car keys, turned on the GPS just to be safe, and headed out. The Walmart was huge, much bigger than any store I had ever been to back home. The bright fluorescent lights and endless aisles filled with products were overwhelming at first, but I was excited to explore. I grabbed a shopping cart and started making my way through the store, checking items off my carefully written list. I had been shopping for about 30 minutes when I encountered the problem. I was pushing my cart down the cereal aisle when I saw a woman standing right in the middle of the aisle, completely blocking the way. She looked to be in her late 50s with short blonde hair and was wearing a bright pink tracksuit. She was just standing there, looking at something on her phone, not paying attention to anything around her. I waited for a few moments, thinking she would notice me and move aside. When she didn't, I politely asked her to excuse me so I could pass. The woman turned around and looked at me with the nastiest expression I had ever seen. What came out of her mouth next shocked me to my core. She told me not to talk to her and that I should go back to China or Mexico or whatever place I came from. I was stunned. All I had done was ask her politely to let me pass. I tried again, asking her once more to let me by, but she only got angrier, telling me to get out of there and not to speak to her. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment and hurt. Other shoppers in nearby aisles were starting to look in our direction. I told her there was no need to be rude, that all I had said was excuse me. She fired back, saying that I was the one being rude by being in a country that wasn't mine and asking people to move around. Her words cut deep. I had come to this country legally to be with my family, and I was just trying to buy groceries like any other person. Just then, a young black woman in her late 20s entered the aisle with her little boy, who looked to be about 6 years old. They had clearly heard the entire exchange. The mother looked appalled by what she was witnessing. The young woman spoke up and told Karen to stop talking to me like that, saying it was completely uncalled for. Karen turned her attention to the young woman and her face twisted with even more hatred. She used a terrible racial slur, asking how someone like her thought she could teach anyone how to talk to others. I gasped. Someone would use such horrible language, especially in front of a child. The young mother pulled out her phone, saying she was recording everything. She told Karen she needed to move out of the way and stop being racist. Karen called the young woman a witch and told her to mind her own business. The situation was escalating quickly. The little boy was hiding behind his mother, clearly scared by all the shouting. I wanted to help somehow, but I didn't know what to do. The young mother tried to guide her son around Karen, telling him they would just go past her. But when they tried to move, something terrible happened. Karen, in a fit of rage, grabbed her loaded shopping cart and shoved it hard toward the young mother. The heavy cart missed the mother, but struck the little boy directly, knocking him to the ground. The child hit the floor hard and immediately started crying. I could see a cut forming on his cheek where the metal cart had scraped him. I gasped and rushed over to help. I hurried to the little boy while his mother knelt beside him, checking his injuries. The poor child was sobbing, and there was blood on his face. The mother was trying to comfort her baby, telling him she was there with him. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and I could see her hands shaking with anger. She asked if I could stay with her son for just a second. I nodded and gently took the little boy's hand while his mother stood up. The fury in her eyes was terrifying when she turned toward Karen, who was still standing there looking smug. The young mother yelled that Karen had just hurt her child. Before Karen could respond, the young mother delivered a powerful punch to the side of Karen's head. Karen crumpled to the ground instantly, her phone skittering across the floor. The sound of Karen hitting the linoleum echoed through the aisle. Several Walmart employees came running toward us, followed by other shoppers who had heard the commotion. One of the employees asked what had happened. The young mother explained that the woman had made racist comments and then deliberately hit her child with a cart. I helped explain what had happened while the young mother comforted her son. The employees called for both the police and an ambulance. Within minutes, the store was filled with the sound of sirens. The EMTs checked the little boy first. Thankfully, his injuries weren't serious, just some bruises and a small cut that needed cleaning and a bandage. The child was brave throughout the whole examination, though he stayed close to his mother. The police reviewed the store's security footage, which clearly showed everything that had happened. They took statements from me, the young mother, and several other witnesses who had seen the incident. Karen, who had regained consciousness, tried to claim she was a victim, but the video evidence told a different story. One of the police officers told her she was under arrest for assault and battery, especially since she had deliberately hurt a child. When they put the handcuffs on Karen, she was still shouting racist slurs and claiming she had done nothing wrong. It was pathetic to watch. The young mother told the police she was pressing charges for what Karen had done to her son. The officer confirmed that was her right and that they had everything documented. Before the young mother left with her son, she came over to thank me for helping her baby. She said she was sorry I had to experience that woman's hatred. I told her I was just glad her son was okay and that she had been very brave. She replied that nobody should have to deal with that kind of treatment and hoped the rest of my time here would be better. I finished my shopping quickly after that, wanting to get home to the safety and comfort of my daughter's house. When I arrived, I told her everything that had happened. My daughter wasn't surprised. She apologized that it had happened to me and explained that, unfortunately, there are people like that here, just like anywhere else in the world. We talked for a long time about racism and how some people react to others who are different from them. My daughter explained that while most Americans are welcoming and kind, there are always a few who harbor hatred and feel entitled to treat others poorly. She told me the important thing was that there were good people there too, like the mother who stood up for me and the employees and police who handled everything properly. She was right. Despite the horrible experience with Karen, I had witnessed incredible kindness from strangers. The young mother had risked her own safety to defend me, even though she didn't know me at all. The store employees had been professional and helpful. The police had taken the situation seriously and made sure everything was handled properly. A few weeks later, my daughter told me that Karen had been charged with assault and battery, along with hate crimes. She had to pay fines and was banned from that Walmart location. The young mother's son had healed completely, with barely a scar to show for his ordeal. That experience taught me that while there will always be people filled with hate and entitlement, there are many more people who believe in doing what's right. The young mother who stepped in to help a stranger, the employees who responded quickly, and the police who ensured everything was handled properly, they all restored my faith in humanity. I still shop at that Walmart, though I'm always a bit more cautious now. But I refuse to let one person's hatred change how I live my life in my new home. America has been good to me, and I'm grateful to be here with my daughter, building a new chapter of my life surrounded by people who care about me. I'm a mother of 3 kids. My oldest son is 19, my daughter is 13, and my youngest boy is 5. The 2 older ones are from my first marriage, which ended when I was in my 20s. Life was tough back then. Single mom, working multiple jobs, trying to keep everything together. When I met my current husband 6 years ago, it felt like finally catching a break. He accepted my kids as his own, and we had our youngest together. Both my 13-year-old and 5-year-old have autism. My daughter needs constant support with daily tasks, and my youngest didn't speak until last year. They both have weekly therapy sessions that eat up most of my days. With my 5-year-old starting school next year, I've been studying at night to get better qualifications so I can contribute more financially. Until recently, my husband's salary was enough to keep us afloat. My oldest son moved out about 18 months ago, full of confidence about making it on his own. 6 months later, he was back sleeping on a mattress in our living room. The rental market here in Australia is brutal, and he couldn't afford his own place anymore. When our lease was ending, we decided to move to a bigger house so everyone could have their own space. At first, everything seemed to work out. My son was working full-time, earning about $1,000 a week. We agreed he'd contribute to household expenses, which seemed fair since he was an adult with income. But then he lost his job and got a payout, which he immediately blew on food delivery orders. That was 13 weeks ago, and he hasn't paid rent since. I tried talking to him about contributing to the household, but he just reminded me that he didn't have a job. When I pointed out that he'd gotten his tax refund and could have used some of that for rent, he said he needed the money for food. I told him he'd spent $800 on delivery food in 3 days and that it wasn't sustainable. He just shrugged and said whatever. That's how most of our conversations go now. He shrugs off any responsibility while the rest of us scramble to make ends meet. He stays up until 4 a.m. playing video games, sleeps until 2 p.m., and won't help with any chores around the house. When I ask him to clean up after himself, He acts like I'm asking him to climb Mount Everest. Then my husband's company went under. Just like that, our main income disappeared. My husband found another job quickly, but there was a 5-week gap in pay because of issues with his previous employer closing down. During those weeks, we were living on government support for my younger kids and whatever help I could get from my ex-husband, which isn't much since he's also unemployed. The worst part is watching my son eat. He'll consume enough food for 3 people in one sitting, usually late at night, when everyone else is asleep. I started skipping meals so there'd be enough for my younger kids. When I confronted him about eating all the leftovers that were supposed to be lunch for his siblings, he said there wasn't that much left. I explained that there was enough for 2 meals and that I'd saved it. His response was that I could just order more food. When I asked him what money we were supposed to use, since we were barely covering bills, he told me that wasn't his problem. I wanted to scream. Here I am, sacrificing my own meals, and he's telling me our financial struggles aren't his problem while living rent-free in our house. When his tax refund came through, I had a tiny spark of hope. Maybe he'd help with some bills, or at least buy his own groceries for a while. Instead, he spent the entire amount on food delivery over a weekend. $800 gone just like that. My husband noticed the bank statement showed 12 delivery orders in one day alone. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, that we were choosing between electricity and groceries, while our son spent money like it was nothing. My husband suggested it might be time for a serious conversation. I said I'd tried serious conversations and that our son just didn't care. We decided to ask him to at least handle his own food costs. We weren't even asking for rent anymore, just that he stopped draining our grocery budget. His response was to order more takeout and leave the containers all over the house. I tried everything. I cleaned his entire room, which took 3 days because it was absolutely disgusting. I washed all his clothes. I started waking him up in the mornings, thinking maybe structure would help. I researched mental health resources and tried to get him support for what I thought might be depression. Nothing worked. The breaking point came last Tuesday. I was making breakfast for my younger kids when I realized there was no milk left. My 5-year-old has a very limited diet because of his autism, and milk is one of the few things he'll consistently consume. I asked my son where the milk was, since I just bought 2 bottles yesterday. He said he used it. When I asked what for, since he doesn't eat cereal, he told me he'd ordered ice cream shakes the night before and ran out of ingredients to make his own. He'd used 2 full bottles of milk to make milkshakes. He said, yeah, so what? I explained that his little brother had nothing to drink now because that milk was for him. He just told me to buy more. That's when I snapped. Not yelling, not screaming, but something inside me just broke. I realized I was enabling someone who had no intention of changing, while my other children suffered for it. The next day, I found comments on a post I'd made seeking advice online. Some people said I was being unfair, that I should get a job myself instead of complaining about my son. Others said I should just kick him out. But one comment really stung. Someone accused me of poor money management and said I was eager to get rid of my son because he was from my previous marriage. That hurt because it wasn't true. I love my son. But love doesn't mean letting someone destroy your family's stability while refusing to contribute or even try to improve their situation. The final straw came on Friday. My husband's first paycheck from his new job finally came through, and we used most of it to catch up on overdue bills. There was just enough left for groceries for the week. When I got home from shopping, my son asked if I'd gotten the good snacks. I told him I'd gotten necessities and food for meals. He wanted to know what he was supposed to eat when he was gaming, since there were no snacks. I suggested he could eat actual meals with the family, but he said he didn't like eating on a schedule. That evening, I watched him order $60 worth of food while my 13-year-old daughter ate toast for dinner because we were rationing groceries until next week. When I asked him about it, he said he was hungry and couldn't wait for me to cook something. That night, my husband and I made the decision. I told him we needed to ask our son to leave. My husband asked if I was sure, and I said I was. This wasn't helping our son grow up, and it was hurting our other kids. The next morning, I sat my son down for what I knew would be our last conversation as housemates. I told him we needed him to find somewhere else to live by the end of the month. He asked what and why. I explained that he was 19 years old and wasn't contributing anything to the household, that he was actually making things harder for everyone else. He said he'd lost his job and it wasn't his fault. I agreed that losing his job wasn't his fault, but not looking for another one for 3 months was. Spending his tax refund on takeout while his siblings ate toast was his fault. Refusing to help around the house was his choice. When he said I couldn't just kick him out, I told him I could, and I was, because he was an adult. He tried arguing, then pleading, then got angry and called me selfish. He said I was choosing my new family over him, which broke my heart but didn't change my mind. 2 days later, he came home excited about a job interview he'd gotten. Apparently, the prospect of actually being homeless was more motivating than months of gentle encouragement. He got the job and suddenly found the energy to do his own laundry and clean up after himself. He moved in with some friends the following week, and for the first time in months, there was enough food in our fridge. My younger kids could eat without me worrying about rationing everything. The house stayed clean. The electricity bill dropped significantly without someone gaming all night. 3 weeks later, he texted me asking for money for groceries. I told him I loved him, but that he was an adult who needed to manage his own expenses. He hasn't asked since. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.